because I realized it had been 3 months since I've seen my daughter. You know, I thought it had been like last week. Time just goes away. And I remember telling her, I got to go try to be a better dad. And I remember her saying, "You're the best dad ever. I love you." She was 5. And as they pulled out of my mom's driveway, it was probably 100 yards across the field. And I got around the edge of the trees where she couldn't see me anymore. I could feel the crying from the car. You would think that would be enough to get a man sober, but it wasn't. But you would think when she came into this world, that would be enough to get a man sober, but it wasn't. I don't think people fully grasp the whole, and everybody will say it's a choice, and it was a choice. I made that choice when I was 17 in a split second. In a period of time in my life, it became where it was not a choice. It was just what I did to survive.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make a different choice at that moment. I couldn't. And I felt like the biggest piece of garbage there ever was because I couldn't. You know, why is my daughter enough? Why wasn't my wife enough? Nothing was ever enough. I say this a lot, and I know it sounds crazy, but thank God I was a drug addict because I got to see what that true love looked like. I got to see God work in a real way that I can't put into words. I saw him reach down into the depths of hell and pull me out. The change inside of me is not something I can describe. You just gotta know.
All right, man. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for being on the podcast, man. And I've got to know you a little bit the last couple months. Get to know about your ministry, and so this whole podcast exists so that people can hear your story, and hopefully people that was in your shoes 10 years ago, 15 years ago, can catch a little bit of hope. And I just really believe the Bible tells us that our lives, like we'll say a lot, and I'll preach a lot. People probably won't remember my sermons, but they'll remember my life story. And stories have a way of living for decades, centuries, and that's what we're doing here on this podcast, is telling our story. And I'm truly can't wait to see how God uses it, man. So if you want to just introduce yourself and take us from the beginning and walk us through this journey.
All right. Well, thank you for asking me to come. It's always a blessing to get to tell how God has rebuilt my life. So my name is Stephen Payne. I was born here in Coleman, Alabama. Lived most of my life in Holly Pond, grew up there, went to high school there. Small town, like 900 people in the whole town at that time. Grew up in a family. My mother and father were divorced when I was 3. Never really knew them together. Like, they were always divorced as far as I knew. I grew up that way. Both were alcoholics. I lived with my dad for most of the time. My dad was the working class alcoholic. He went to work every day, provided for us kids. I don't remember ever needing anything that I didn't have. He was not the greatest at showing love, but he did provide for our physical needs. Mom, on the other hand, I would go visit on weekends and during the summertime, and there was always a party at Mom's house. My stepfather was sold boats, worked in the boating industry, so we lived on the lake. Had it was pretty sweet, actually. So him being a boat salesman, on the weekends we'd take the boats out, brand new boats that we could never afford to buy, but we get to ride around in them on the weekends. And of course, water always attracts alcohol and people.
Yeah.
So there was just always a big party.
I think that's like 2 parts of every country song's formula.
Yeah.
Water and then alcohol.
Water and alcohol. And so being the big party, nobody ever paid much attention to the kids running around. So at an early age, I was introduced to alcohol. I took my first drink that I remember when I was 13 years old. My mom and stepdad were having a party at their lake house that they lived in, and it was actually a young man and young woman getting married. Now I've always been overweight. I've always been kind of the big kid in school. Was never really popular. Didn't have a lot of girlfriends or things like that.
Really?
So,
That beard? Man, I just feel like you had that beard since you were 13, you know?
The eyes and the hair.
Yeah. Blue eyes.
Uh, but this young lady that was getting married to this guy was a very pretty young lady, and I took my first drink that night. I was drinking H&H bourbon and Diet Dr. Pepper, mixing it together at 13 years old. Nobody knew I was drinking. My brother caught me, said something to my mom, and my mom's response was, "You need to mix that with something clear, you'll be sick in the morning." That was the only consequence for my action. And so I continued to drink that night, and everybody thought it was funny. I proceeded to tell this young lady that she was no longer going to marry the man she had planned to marry, that now things had changed, now I was going to be her husband. Everybody just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And so for the rest of the night, I was the life of the party.
Yeah. And how old? 13?
13. So the next morning I woke up as sick as I ever remember being, throwing up, but thinking to myself, that was awesome. It was the greatest thing ever. Sitting in the floor, throwing up, and thinking that was great. Something not right about it.
Yeah.
So from a very early age, I drank alcoholically. From that moment on, I drank as often as I could. Every chance I got, I was drinking.
What was the environment that was creating the access to the alcohol at 13?
Mostly my mom's house.
Okay.
Like I said, they drank heavily. So when they would all be drunk, there's always alcohol sitting on the table. There's always alcohol in the house. I would fill bottles of it and bring it home with me, because Dad's house is a little harder. You couldn't drink at Dad's house like you could at Mom's. Dad paid more attention. He kept us in line. He only drank beer. He didn't drink whiskey. So we would actually, me and my cousin and my brothers would actually collect from his dad, my mom, their dad, and we would stockpile it.
Scavengers.
Yeah, and then we would we'd camp out. Tell Mom and Dad we were camping out for the weekend, and we'd go get hammered drunk in the woods somewhere, wake up in a field or whatever. Good stuff.
Yeah. It's a wild start to the story, to this podcast.
So, and that was at 13. So as time went along, it got worse. When I got 16, and I was able to leave home and go out by myself. Growing up in a small country town, that's just what you did on the weekends. So everybody got together, they drank. There were places you could go that would sell it to you, and so we did. We'd hang out at the little local gas station in the middle of town, and sit up there and drink. Go out to fields and drink.
It's wide open.
Just small town life. So it. At 16, I would drink to the point of blackout drunk at 16, 17 years old. Not just taking a drink, drinking on the weekends. It was fun. Never saw any harm in it. I always thought that one day, I always thought I could take Mom's life and Dad's life and then put them together.
Yeah.
I thought I could do the party drinking and still work, and hold a job and do all those things. And it just wasn't possible for me. So at 17, I had snuck out of the house with my cousin, and so he and I drank a lot together. He was probably way worse than I was. He, as far as I know, is still in prison. He spent most of his life in prison. So he and I snuck out of the house. His dad was a mechanic, so we would go and siphon gas out of all the cars he was working on, fill one car up, and steal it for the night, and go drink.
Yeah. And
so we'd go to some friends' house, so we were drinking, and sitting there drinking, smoking weed. Had a guy pulls out a baggie, and I'd never seen it before. I had heard about it on TV, but never did have any idea what it was. And it was crystal meth. So I had no idea what I was doing. I was tying my boot on a cooler full of beer. My cousin said, "Hey, fat boy, try some of this." Then handed me a rolled up dollar bill. And the time it took me to get from my boot on this cooler to this table, I made the decision to try it. I never woke up one day and told my guidance counselor I want to be a drug addict when I grow up. I never dreamed in a million years that at 17, trying it one time, I'd be 34 years old trying to get off of it. Never dreamed. It was just, I was there, and it was there. Everybody else is doing it. And I made that decision in a split second, and it changed my life forever. I tried it. I loved it. Made me feel like Superman. It's kind of funny now to look back at, but an old guy used to always say that alcohol does something to everybody that drinks it, but it did something for me. It changed the way I saw the world. It changed the way I saw myself. All of a sudden, that Mazda in the driveway became a Maserati. I could sing, I could dance, I could do all these things, and I was better. I was a better person with it. I could do everything better with it. It changed my whole perspective.
Were you already wrestling with self-worth and those things as a teenager drinking and before the crystal meth? You talked about how it changed you and you felt like you were better. Were you already struggling with the emptiness at that point in your life, or was it just, did you just not know?
Yeah, I mean, alcohol did the same thing.
Yeah.
Alcohol did the same thing. Okay. I was funnier on that. People liked to be around me. I was the guy that, like I said, I never had a date in school. Nobody picked me for the kickball team. I wasn't a very good athlete. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer anybody. But I could take a few drinks and I was funny. Yeah. I would do crazy stuff and the more I drank, the crazier I got. And people just, I thought they were laughing with me.
Yeah.
Really laughing at me. And that was life for a long time. And so at 17 years old, actually back up to 13 years old, I went to my first treatment center when I was 13 years old.
13 years old.
2 years old. Wow. I went to at Bradford, and I had never been to anything like that before in my life. At 16, I ran away from home. I took the car that I was paying for, but still belonged to my dad, and ran for several days. They finally caught me, took me to juvenile detention. First time I'd ever been locked up. They took me to Coleman County Jail and chained me to the water fountain so somebody could take me to juvenile detention. Wow. I go to juvenile detention, and I was supposed to be there for quite a long time, but my dad got hurt real bad at work, and wasn't sure that he was going to make it, and so they let me out to go see him. Seemed like after that, from 17 years old on, every summer I was in some kind of a treatment center somewhere. Spent my last half of my 11th grade year, I went to school in a treatment center. Wow. And so that was kind of life for me. And I would go and I would do well. I would complete the treatment center, do everything they asked me to do, and it wouldn't be long I'd be drinking again. But came out, I never could. At that time, I didn't even stop. I just wanted to quit getting in trouble.
Yeah.
I didn't want to quit.
Could you see the negative consequences that it was causing in your life at that point yet, or are you just so immature that you're just living free and not really caring?
I think looking back at it now, my home life wasn't great. Mom and dad fought a lot. On my real mom's side, there was a lot of physical abuse in her home. A lot of arguing and fighting in my mom and dad's, my dad's house where I lived. My stepmother and I never really got along very well. Yeah. I was always in trouble for something. And so honestly, treatment every summer was a vacation for me.
Just to get away.
It got me out of home. I was around people that were like me. That I could relate to these folks. They could relate to me. That was not the case at home. Nobody could understand, why do you do these things? I was just a horrible individual at home. But in a treatment center, I was just like everybody else.
And you had community.
Yeah. And and I had been in treatment enough that I knew how to do treatment. so I was a rock star in treatment, and so honestly, I think I enjoyed it. I know that sounds crazy, but I honestly believe that I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Now, as it went along, and you
Got a little tougher.
yeah, when you start going to to the actual big boy jail, it's not very much fun. So I'd been sober for a little bit of time there, graduated high school, and joined the Marine Corps. 6 days after graduation, I was to ship off to boot camp. Mom and Dad, I had been in trouble. Imagine that, but I had been in trouble,
Yeah.
and I wasn't allowed to go on my spring break trip. And so I left home, took the truck that I was buying at the time from my dad, and we drove to Panama City. What are they going to do? 6 days from now, I'm flying out to Parris Island, South Carolina to go to Marine Corps boot camp.
It ain't gonna matter.
It's not going to matter. And that's what I did. I came back on the day that I was supposed to ship out, and I was drunk before I got to the beach. Stayed drunk the whole time I was there. Came back, shipped out to boot camp, and this is the crazy part of my story, but I got there and I was overweight. I couldn't do the pull-ups I was supposed to do. I think even at this time, I was looking for something to straighten me out, something to make me a man, to stop doing the things that I was doing. I thought the Marine Corps would be the thing that would do that. This recruiter came to our high school dressed in his dress blues, and man, I wanted to be like that guy. I wanted to just want to be like that guy. So I get there, can't do the pull-ups I need to do to be able to get in. They put me in a physical conditioning platoon, or as they call it there, pork chop platoon, where they put you on a diet and you work out every day. Well, I had been on this island for like 13 weeks. I'd never been away from home other than treatment. And they had me as what they called the big gear locker recruit. I was the guy that ran the locker, had all the materials and supplies in it for everyone else. I got caught on fire watch huffing lighter fluid. And I'm in the laundry room, sitting on a bucket, huffing lighter fluid out of a plastic bag. I don't even recall making a decision to do that. I just remember the drill instructor coming in and saying, "What are you doing?" And I looked up at him and said, "Huffing lighter fluid." It's so neat.
Drug addict, but an honest drug addict.
Yeah, I'm huffing lighter fluid, man. What you think?
Yeah.
And, so,
Do you remember intentionally looking for a way to get high while you were there?
I always was looking for a way to escape. I thought if anything was bad, if life was hard, I wanted to find a way to escape. And I was a garbage can junkie, man. I would use whatever we could find. Thank God I lived in a small town where some of the harder drugs, heroin and things like that, not the crystal meth's not a hard drug, but those things were never available.
Yeah.
If they had have been, I probably would have used those too. I used whatever I could. Whatever was available, that's what I did. I wanted to feel different. It was never about the taste of alcohol. It was all about feeling different. So left there, of course, failed again, came back home. Wasn't long I moved in with some friends of mine. My drug addiction was bad enough there that he asked me to leave. Left there, went to my mom's, and in Decatur. I was just bouncing from place to place, wherever somebody could tolerate me long enough for me to stay there. Got into cocaine and crack cocaine in Decatur.
Oh, wow.
Told somebody one time I tried crack cocaine for about 2 years.
Good old sample size.
Yeah, and so I got cleaned up a little bit for a while there. Went to another treatment center, got cleaned up for a little while, and met my wife. We had talked some when I was in school. I took her on the first date she ever went on. I had just graduated high school, and she was 15 years old, actually. Crazy. Her mom and dad
Wasn't happy.
let me take her.
How they let you?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's on them. I mean,
Yeah.
hey, who can blame you?
Right? So, And then because of my drinking and my drug addiction, we parted ways for a long period of time. I came back to Holly Pond and ran into her again. And I thought to myself that I'm going to marry that girl. That's going to be my wife. I'm going to marry her. And I'm going to get my stuff together. I'm going to marry her. And so she calls me. We started talking, dating, and got married. I thought surely if I got married, that would straighten me up.
So while you're dating, are you still actively using drugs and partying? And
Not as bad. I kept it together for a little while. I was drinking, smoking weed some, but I left the meth alone for a period of time there while we were together. Used very little here and there. She grew up in a home where if they drank, it was casual. She had never seen anyone like me.
Yeah.
She had no idea what she was getting herself in. She thought, and she'll tell you that she was very naive, that she thought that she could change me and I would quit. And I remember one time her taking my weed from me. she thought that would make me stop.
yeah.
And I remember telling her, we had already talked about getting married. We were going to get married. I was working at the time, and I told her, I said, I like to smoke weed and I like to fish. If you expect me to quit either one of those, there's no sense in you marrying me because I'm not going to. And she thought, oh, well, we got married, and life was tough, man. I didn't make very much money. Most of what I did make, I spent in a bar or on marijuana. I was smoking large amounts of marijuana, drinking every day. Angry, violent fights. I thought that she would get me sober, and when she didn't, it made me angry. And it
Violent fights as in?
I never physically but I might as well.
Yeah.
The way I talked to her was very ashamed of that. And it scared her to death. She had no idea how to handle that. I thought for sure we would have a child, and that would fix me. Surely I'll grow up and be a man if I have a child. Had my daughter and held her in my arms. For the first time in my life, I felt love. I had no idea at the time what that really was. And handed my daughter back to my wife, walked outside the hospital and smoked a joint with my friends.
Wow.
Never checked up, never slowed down. Things kept getting worse, and my wife got to the point that she did not want my daughter to think that that's what love was, the way we fought and argued. And so she divorced me.
And how long had your daughter been alive when the divorce?
She was 18 months old. And I was working out of town, and I knew it was coming, and I had moved her away from her home. I lived in her mom and dad's backyard. I was buying the house that my dad, that I grew up in. She did not want to live there, and I didn't give her a choice.
Yeah.
And she had a choice. She left. My dad used to always tell me, boy, you got to put your foot down and tell this woman what she's going to do. And so I did. I put my foot down, and she left.
She put her foot down on the gas pedal and just got out there.
She left and took my child with her and everything that we owned. And it got bad, man. It got real bad. I climbed into a bottle, went to a friend's house, and it was crazy. I wasn't even looking for meth that night. I went to get a bag of weed. And this guy had some meth like I had never seen before. And I bought some and stayed for about 2 weeks in my house and never left, just getting high and drinking. It was, I think I was trying to kill myself at the time. And then it just continually got worse. I couldn't keep a job, kept getting fired, kept quitting, going to different places. Dad ends up kicking me out of the house. I was still living in the house that I was trying to buy from him. Kicked me out of there, left, moved into another house. It wasn't long, they kicked me out because I wouldn't pay rent. Moved into a friend's house in Huntsville. It was just all over the place.
It's a circle or cycle. It's leaving, coming, leaving.
And was not very consistent in my daughter's life at all. Well, was seeing her some then, but not a lot. I decided it was time to do something different. Kept going to jail. I would go to jail, get out, go back to jail. Decided it was time to do something different. So I'd actually gotten stuck at my cousin's house in Bug Tussle, Alabama.
Bug Tussle. Man, that sounds like it. Sounds like a country music album.
Yeah, in the middle of the woods, getting high. Had been there for a couple of months and didn't even realize how long I'd been gone. My brother came and got me into a treatment center, the Foundry, in Bessemer. Foundry is a faith-based treatment center. For the first time in my life, I was introduced to the Bible. I was introduced to church and the Bible. I read the Bible from cover to cover, a couple of different versions. I think I was trying to prove my wife wrong or figure out what was wrong with me. Stayed sober for about a year, got out, and I never continued. I didn't continue reading my Bible. I didn't continue going to church, and right back to it again.
What was after you'd been sober for a year plus, what was the moment that led you to going back?
I was scared. Before I ever even graduated the Foundry, I came out of the Foundry and was sitting at home, and the bar that I used to hang out in Huntsville was closing down. And a friend had called me and told me this bar is closing down, and I thought, I got to go see all my friends. I got to go hang out. I hadn't had a drink in a year. So I go up there and walk up to the bar, and it was like I had never left. I walked in and ordered exactly what I had always drank, and just picked up right where I left off.
So the time away had not created any kind of discipline in you to...
No. Went to jail that night. Realized I was too drunk to drive, pulled over on the side of the road, and so my dad came and bailed me out of jail and took me from jail to walk across the stage at the Foundry and graduate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh.
What was that moment like, knowing what you had done in your...
Sickening. It actually made me sick to my stomach. It was like, because, man, I really wanted to quit at this point. Like, I wanted to stop. And every time I would get to that point, like I was then, I thought I had it. I've got it now. It's okay. I've got it. It was almost like I could see God working, and I could see God drawing me to Him, and I could see the better in following the Lord. But it was almost like I would follow Him just long enough to get better, and He'd be like, "Okay, God, I got it. Thanks for getting me here.
Yeah,
but I've got it now.
I'll take the rest of the way."
Yeah. I appreciate you getting me back on my feet. I'll handle it from here. I wanted. I call them fish sandwich Christians. The Christians that followed Jesus after He fed the 5,000.
Yeah.
They follow Him across, and they're looking for breakfast. They had their lunch, and they're looking for breakfast, and I think that was me. I was looking for what God could give me, but I wasn't looking for God. I didn't want to be I wanted to be a fan.
Yeah.
A follower.
Mm-hmm.
Good preacher friend of mine said that one time. I thought that's good. But I was introduced to the Bible. I did read it, and I was introduced to the Bible. I knew where to go when I needed to go. I just was ready.
Yeah.
I was ready to be sober. Just wasn't ready to follow God yet. Got out of there. I'll never forget it as long as I live. The day that I told my daughter that I was going. This is very sad part of my story, but I sat down with my daughter and I talked to her, and I was just in tears, man, just a mess. And because I realized it had been 3 months since I'd seen my daughter, and I thought it had been like last week. Time just goes away, and I remember telling her that I got to go try to be a better dad. And I remember her saying, "You're the best dad ever. I like you." She was 5. And as they pulled out of my mom's driveway, it was probably 100 yards across the field. When I got around the edge of the trees where she couldn't see me anymore, I could feel the crying car. You would think that would be enough to get a man sober, but it wasn't. But you would think when she came into this world, that would be enough to get a man sober, but it wasn't. And I don't think people fully grasp the whole. And everybody else says it's a choice, and it was a choice. I made that choice when I was 17 in a split second. In a period of time in my life, it became where it was not a choice. It was just what I did to survive.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make a different choice at that moment. I couldn't. And I felt like the biggest piece of garbage there ever was because I couldn't. You know, why is my daughter enough? Why wasn't my wife enough? Nothing was ever enough. You know, so that was before I went to treatment. Went to the foundry, came back out. Things got worse again. I didn't last very long after that before I got right back into the whole thing again. Ended up to the point of being homeless. My mom got tired of all my stuff. I would go out for weeks at a time, come to her house whenever I was out, and sleep for several days. I had come to the conclusion that I can't get sober. I'm never going to be able to get sober, so I got to figure out how to stay high all the time. As long as I can stay high all the time, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
Never run out, then I'll be all right.
We start working.
Yeah.
You better be Bill Gates.
So, well, I learned how to make it. So, worst thing I ever did. I'll never in a million years forget the first time I ever made crystal meth and I watched it form. I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be bad. This is going to be hard to stop. And it was. Got caught for that. For the first time I had been in and out of jail. And by this time, I would never go to court, so I would go to jail for 30, 60, 90 days. I'd get out. I might last a month out. They'd put me right back in. I was just racking up charges after charges. Had a lot of manufacturing materials in my vehicle one night, left and got stopped for a bad tag. And the police officer pulls me over for this bad tag, and I have a warrant for me in Coleman. And so he's arrested me. And I was always one to take my punishment.
Yeah.
You know, I knew.
I'm here.
Yeah, you got me. You know, but this particular night, I knew what was in the trunk of my car, and he did not yet. And so I tried to get away from him. And he tases me. So the first taser shot, one hits me in the leg, one hits me in the chest, and I pulled it out of my chest and took off running into the sky.
Superman.
I thought I was trying to get the taser off his side. And
Which is a good way to get killed.
yeah, just thank God he didn't shoot me. And he spins around and hits me with his taser again, and this time he got me good. 20 foot of cable, I couldn't get it out. Next thing I know, I'm on my face in the gravel, hollering, please quit, please quit, please quit.
He lit you up.
Yeah, he did. I really need to find that guy, apologize to him, and thank him too, because that was the beginning of the end for me. I caught 2 manufacturing charges that night, criminal mischief, attempting to escape. Didn't get me for assault because I didn't hit him, thank God. And went to jail, sitting in jail, and the guy comes and he says, I said, so what kind of time am I looking at here? Because I never had anything over a possession. And he said, this is Class A fellow, same as a rape or a murder. I said, how are you looking at? He said, you could do 25 years in prison for this. And I was like, oh my God, like, wow. And
Did the consequences of your life's decisions, like, did you feel the weight for the first time in this moment?
yeah, and I'm just thinking, like, this has gotten really, time moves so fast when you're, it does anyway, but when you're getting high and every day's the same, it's like Groundhog Day. You just wake up and you do the same thing every day, and time moves so fast. I mean, months would go by and it'd feel like days. You know, a year would go by and it'd feel like a week. You know, you didn't even acknowledge how long you had been this way. I'd been like that for 20 years, had no idea. And so at that moment, I was like, okay, this is getting serious. Had a guy that had quite a bit of money that was purchasing some of the stuff that I made. he came and bonded me out of jail. When I bonded out of jail there, took me to Coleman for the warrant. He came and bonded me out there. Swore that I would never do it again. I'm done. These are the moments when I would pray, God, please get me out of this, and I'll never do it again. I promise God I'll never do it again. Guy comes, gets me out of jail, hands me a bag full of ingredients, and says, let me know when you're done. I got out that morning. By lunchtime that afternoon, I was right back at it. Never checked up. God was trying to get my attention. He really was. Caught several possession charges after that back then. I don't know if it's still like that now, but every time you got a possession charge, that was a felony.
So you're stacking felonies.
Yeah. And so by the time I was finished, I had 7 felonies, 3 different counties. Had 2 of them being manufacturings. And so I was living in this house with this guy selling dope. By this time, I was living wherever I could find a place. I'd sleep in a barn, sleep under bridges. It had gotten really bad. Cops came in this house that we were at. I would ride a bicycle everywhere I went, like all over town, ride a bicycle. So I'd gone to this house this night, and I'd rode my bicycle over there, and I would sit in this house and sail, and then I would get on the bicycle and ride back out. And so I'm riding down the road on this bicycle, 2 o'clock in the morning, flashlight in my mouth, in my teeth, riding this bicycle, just getting. A cop comes by, and he stops and comes back, and I'm like, why'd you pull me over, man?
Does that count as a pullover?
Yeah. I was like, what? Yeah, and in my mind, I'm like, this guy has no right to pull me over. What is he doing? Why is he even stopping me? 2 o'clock in the morning.
With a back of the
With a flashlight in my teeth at about what I weigh right now, I weigh a lot, but at this time I weighed about 140 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm about 100 pounds heavier than
So you fit the mold of it. So this guy's running off something I don't think it's Red Bull.
yeah, he's wide open, pedaling down the road at 30 miles an hour. But in my mind, I really couldn't understand why this guy's not want to stop me. What's he doing? Bad. So anyway, he wanted to search my bag. I told him he couldn't search my bag without a warrant. And so about 3 days later, they came kicking the door in at the house I was living in. I say this a lot, but God sent 7 angels dressed a lot like Coleman County police officers. Coleman County Narcotics Enforcement Team, to be exact. And they came in, and honestly, man, I was relieved. I was like, oh my God, thank you. And then they didn't carry me to jail. They didn't take anybody to jail that day. They just came in, they didn't find what they were looking for. We had sold out the night before. And I remember going and talking to this guy and asking him for help that day.
Who? One of the officers?
The officers. Like, I wanted them to take me to jail that day. I was tired. I was done. I was tired. And I was already on drug court for the manufacturing charges, which was a blessing in itself because you don't get drug court for felonies, for Class A felonies. They don't give you drug court for that. So they dropped them down to Class C felonies. And I'd gotten drug court. Drug court's very intensive. Couldn't do it. Went and told the lady, her name is Tammy Jolly. She was running the Morgan County drug court that day. That lady helped me. She really did. I went and told her, I said, look, you're going to send me to prison anyway. I can't stay clean. Just go ahead and send me. Just go ahead and send me. Let me do my time. And I thought for sure that 5 years, I was looking at 5 years in prison. I thought I would go down there for 5 years. I'd spend 5 years in prison, wouldn't be able to get a hold of any drugs, and I would come back and be sober. And she looked at me and she said, let me see if I can help you first. And I was like, yeah.
Listen, we're 20 years deep.
Years deep. Seven treatment centers. No one's been able to help me yet, but if you want to try, by all means, give it your best shot. And she did. She sent me to a 21-day treatment center in Russellville, Alabama. I left there and went to a halfway house very reluctantly. I did not want to go to this halfway house, but Miss Jolly explained to me that I was, she said, you're going from one state bed to another. It was a state-run facility because I couldn't afford anything else. My ex-wife comes and gets me with my daughter and takes me into the treatment center. Someone else paid for it. I don't even know how it got paid for. We go, and I was introduced to AA. the big book. Miss Jolly says you're going from one state bed to another. You can either leave here and go to prison, or you can leave here and go to a halfway house. You decide.
Yeah.
I was like, that halfway house.
Yeah.
Don't seem
Prison and halfway house.
Let's check it out, see what it's all about. Had not spoken to my dad a little over 7 years. He came. I had $500 to get in this halfway house. I didn't have the money. So I called my dad. Dad comes and gets me, takes me to the halfway house, pays my way in, gives me $60, and leaves. I'm in Dothan, Alabama, 5 hours away from anybody I know. And the thing that scared me the most about this whole deal was that I had to supply my own food. That seemed like a big deal to you.
No, but listening to your story, I can imagine you were scrapping.
Well, I had lived at home my whole life, or in jail. So I ate whatever somebody.
And how old are you while you're at the halfway house now?
I was 34 years old.
34.
Yeah. So 34 years old. And yeah, long time, but there's a lot to the story that we don't have time for. We get to the halfway house, and it was around this time of year. I got sober on November the 14th. It's November 20th, 2014 is when this was. So we get to the halfway house. By this time, I was about 60 days sober. 30 days sober. It's 21-day treatment center, so I was 30 days sober. Get there, and the deal with this halfway house is you had to get a sponsor, you had to work the steps, and you had to go to meetings. There's no Bible, no God in it, except what was there in the AA. Started going to these AA meetings. I was like, I'll do whatever I need to keep from going to prison. I don't want to go to prison. And started going to AA meetings, and I was thinking, there's no way those 12 steps are going to get me sober. There's no way. I mean, after all the things I've tried, you're telling me those 12 things in that wall right there is going to get me sober. No way. There's a lot of God involved in it. It's spiritual program of action, they call it. Well, 12th step says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics who still suffer. That's what happened for me. I worked the 12 steps just the way they told me to do. I would have stood on my head in the corner or ran around the building backwards if they had told me to get me sober.
You were like that.
I wanted what these people had. I wanted to be sober. They hadn't been to jail in a long time, and I didn't want to go to jail anymore. And so I did what they told me to do, and it worked. I got sober, started working, started going around and telling my story, and I had a sponsor. I was sponsoring guys. I was doing everything the program taught me to do. Had come home. I was coming home at the time and visiting my daughter, and we had started coming to church. I didn't know anything about church. Went a few times when I was a kid. Because they had Kool-Aid and cookies, and you could color these things, got me out of the house for a little while, and they had Kool-Aid and cookies.
Kool-Aid and cookies.
Yes, sir.
I think I remember the First Century Church offering that and that was the movements, and I was kidding.
Was great.
Yeah. That's where the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid" comes from. Is that it?
So.
I think that's cool. It's not bad.
Yeah. And so I started coming home and visiting my daughter. I had no idea how to be a dad. I had no idea what to do. And so we went to church. I would come. They had a recovery meeting here in this room. It's crazy. The first time I ever gave my testimony in front of a church crowd was in this room. The first message I ever preached was in this room. And the first podcast I ever did was in this room.
There was absolutely zero plan, but I just felt like, hey, it'd be cool to come to the Rock. Yeah. That's just crazy how God works. Even in this, there was no coordination of this. That we just sit down and you tell me, hey, this is the first place I said my testimony. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, funny how God works.
Yeah.
So I found myself after working the steps a year sober, which I never thought I could ever do. And to be honest, I think I did it to get the next chip. They give you a 30-day, a 60-day, a 90-day, and a 1-year chip. And so I didn't want to have to start back over.
Yeah.
So I would carry. You can look at my 30-day chip and my 60-day chip. The paints wore off of them because I would put them in my pocket whenever I would just when I'd get angry or I'd think about taking a drink, I went to every meeting I could go to.
Yeah.
Because I was scared to death to get high again. I didn't want to do it. I never wanted to go back to being like that again. Then at about a year sober, man, I had gotten my last, it's going to be another year before I get another chip now, And so all that stuff was over, and I had gone to a friend's house that I had no business going to. Knew exactly what was going on there. Walked up to the door as a girlfriend, and she had asked me to bring her a snack and a drink. And so I knew my ex-wife at the time, was not home yet, so I could see my daughter. They were on their way back from somewhere, so I was trying to kill time until they got home. And I would come from the halfway house and sleep on her couch and visit with my daughter. And the crazy thing was, even throughout my whole addiction, my wife would come get me from wherever I was, under the bridge or out of the dope man's house or whatever. Let me get a shower and clean up, spend a little time with my daughter.
What a woman.
Yeah. That was stuff. She is a sight. And she took me back to wherever she picked me up from and dropped me off. Yeah. So I'm standing in her driveway, at the end of her driveway, and I had gone in this girl's house, and as I'm walking into the back room where we always used to go get high, as I'm going to turn the doorknob, something in me, I believe it was the Holy Spirit, but I yelled out, "Hey," before I opened the door. As I opened the door, they're putting the pipe away and hiding the stuff. And so I sit the snack and the drink on the table. I said, "I'll see you later." And I left. And by the time I made it to my truck, I was bawling, crying. I knew that I was that close to getting high. That I was, okay.
Yeah, but
Everything.
what in this moment allowed you to go back to the car? Because in every other moment, it was second nature.
I think it had to be God. I think it had. I don't even know why. I knew what was going on in that house before I ever went there, and I believe it's subconscious. That's why I was going. But when I got there, it had to be God. It had to be. There's no other explanation.
Yeah.
There's no other reason why I would have yelled "Hey" before I opened that door. Never had before. Wow. And thank God I did, because they would have been in the middle of it when I opened the door.
Yeah.
And they were hiding it, put it away, and I left, and I have not seen her passing since then. But by the time I made it to my truck, I was crying, bawling, crying, and drove straight to my ex-wife at the time's house, stood in the end of the driveway, called my sponsor, and he said, "What are we going to do about it?" He said, "We need to work another 4th step." He said, it was really crazy, because he was like 3 days away. I was 3 days before I went back to see him, and I remember crying out to God that day. And I said, "God, I've done everything that I know to do, and it hasn't worked. And I don't know what else to do. I don't want to get high again, because I need your help." I got saved that day. Really got saved that day, and my life has never been the same. I went back to the halfway house. We sat down and did my 4th step, my second 4th step. But this is where it's a morals inventory. You take an inventory of your life, the things that you've done bad, the things that you've done good. My first 4th step that I did early on in my recovery was no different than my second one, except I wasn't getting high anymore. The only difference was I took drugs and alcohol away. I was still doing all the bad things. I was still dating every girl I could date. I was still lying. I was still cheating. I was still doing all the bad things I was doing. I just wouldn't get high anymore. Now I had no drugs and alcohol to cover it up. And so I was miserable. And a good alcoholic and a good drug addict's not going to be miserable for long.
Yeah.
I'm going to find something to make me feel better. And that's what it was always about in my life. I always wanted to feel better. And anyway, God starts drawing me back, and we had visited several churches, me and my daughter. I had no idea what to do as a father, so I would come home from the halfway house on the weekends. They had a recovery meeting in this room right here, I would come to the recovery meeting on Friday nights, and I would help do whatever I could help do. Saturdays, we'd go play softball all day, and then Sunday, we'd come to church. And I came in this church, and it's huge, lots of people.
Yeah.
I came around the corner, and my daughter has always been so much stronger than me. The story I told earlier, she was not afraid. She just took off, and I'm not letting my daughter go by herself. So I followed her. We come around the corner, and there's a guy that I went to high school with, that I used to party with, standing there greeting me at the door with a suit and tie on, and his son standing across from him greeting. And I go up and talk to him, and he was actually working in the children's ministry here at this church. And I thought, if I let this guy in here, I should be okay.
Yeah.
And so we started coming to church. I started serving, doing all I could do. God was drawing me back. I ended up coming back, scared to death. Took me 2 years to make the decision to come back. Spent every dime I had trying to get back here. Living in a travel camper. Went from making, my pay got cut in half, basically. Now, didn't get my last paycheck from the job I was working. Maxed out my credit card. Was about to starve to death before I started getting paid on my new job. And I thought, I was scared that I was getting away from AA and the church wouldn't accept me, or that at some point I would stop coming. I started coming here and Pastor Malcolm's preaching, and I started getting into the Word of God. He preached in a way that I could understand it. I could read the Bible, and then he would preach what I was reading, and I could understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to understand the Bible the way he did, so I started studying it. I went and bought a set of John MacArthur commentaries. Still can jump.
There we go. Went in deep.
Yeah. Well, I asked. I was like, "Hey, what's the best commentary I can get? Get a John MacArthur commentary." So I went and bought the whole set. That
That's 4 paychecks.
yeah, it's a lot. It was a lot. I actually bought them off of the site online. Little at a time. The guy that was running the recovery ministry here, he moved on, and my wife and I, let me back up a little there. So we came back. I was living in a camper in my father-in-law's yard. My father-in-law for many years wouldn't speak to me because of the way I was and the way I treated my wife and my daughter. We had started slowly talking a little bit as time went along. I was moving back. I didn't know where I was going to park my camper. And so me and my wife had lived in their backyard, basically, where our trailer was. We got power and water and everything up there. He said, "Why don't you just park it up there?" And I was like, kind of, okay. And so I did. So I lived in their yard. Had no idea that me and my wife would ever be back together.
Yeah.
And I had prayed and talked to God, and I said, "God, please show me how at this time I'm studying my Bible." Like, man, I had all kinds of study stuff going on. If I wasn't working, I was studying my Bible. I was reading and studying my Bible. Yeah. And so I'm praying and asking God, like, "God, send me the woman that you want me to be with." And I think he was like, "I already."
Yeah, it's already delivered her about 15 years ago.
Yeah. So we started serving here at Life Recovery together, where we started going to, it's really funny because we would go to couples small group, but we weren't married. We didn't live in the same house. We weren't married, and everybody was like, "What's going on with these two guys?"
Yeah.
What's up with them? And so we ended up getting remarried. We got remarried in this room right here.
Unbelievable how many things.
So the guy that was leading Life Recovery, married us right here. It was really cool. So we were divorced 14 years and got remarried 5 years ago.
That is unreal. 14 years apart, and God brought y'all back together.
She was the one. She always was. I knew it when I first saw her. She was the one. I never I knew in my mind I could never be the husband she needed me to be, or the husband that she deserved. And so I kind of stay away from her during the bad times. I had no idea what a husband looked like. I let the Bible teach me that. I had no idea what a father looked like. I let the Bible teach me that. I didn't know what a church is supposed to look like. I let the Bible teach me that.
Yeah.
Since then, when Jeff left here, me and my wife, Sabrina, took over the life recovery here. We started leading life recovery down here. We did for about a year. Got involved. God called me to preach. Not long after that, started allowing me, showed me, giving me places to go preach. We started going to the jail with work release guys on Sunday mornings. She teaches the women, I teach the men. And so that has been a wonderful, wonderful ministry. That it is probably the greatest thing God allows me to do. I think of we have also bought a small house just down the road here, where we could hold 5 guys that come out of jail. They're trying to get their life back together. We provide them a sober, safe place to live. Help them get back and forth to work, help them find jobs, driver's licenses, things like that. That it doesn't seem like a big deal to most people, but just having a ride to go do these things is a huge deal for most of these guys. It's just crazy what God has done in my life and how He's rebuilt my life. And I think of Paul in Acts chapter 9, where Paul is on the road to Damascus, and then Jesus comes and knocks him off his high horse. And the Bible says he was laying there, and he says, trembling and astonished, he asked, Lord, what would you have me do? That's me, trembling and astonished. God could shoot someone like me. We see it so often that we think that God can't, or that God won't. And I tell the guys at the jail all the time that God and can't should never be together. How arrogant must we be to think that my sins, my bad life could undo what Christ did on the cross. When He said it was finished, He meant it was finished. And what He did on that cross was so much greater than any bad that I could do. So I sit trembling and astonished. So thank you for asking me to come and do this, because I still today am astonished that God would use someone like me. It amazes me every day.
Well, I mean, I'm blessed to sit here in the passion and the love in which you're able to talk about God, and how emotional you're getting. It really does move me. I see the full circle in your life. You didn't have parents that were good, that were at least good examples to you. But God has made a way for you to be in your daughter's life and to be a good example now. You didn't have a place to go and you were homeless. Now you're buying a house for men and pouring into them and discipling. You sat in jail cells wanting to find it, and now you go to jail telling people where it is. And so I just think it's just a beautiful story, and your life's an example of there's never a point in which God can't grab somebody, transform them, and use them in ways they didn't even know that was possible to be used. You know what I mean? It's so beautiful. And I'd like to close with these 2 questions, because I don't know how much time we got left for this camera to dice. But when you kept saying, I thought this was going to be it. I thought this was going to be it. And it wasn't. It wasn't all throughout the stages. What did you find at the end of your wife's driveway when you called out? And what is it, and how has it transformed you?
I heard a guy say this one time, and it really made sense to me, and I use it a lot. But I believe that there's a God-shaped hole inside of every single one of us. We're all born with it. It's a hole inside of you that only God can fill. And we'll try to fill that hole with everything under the sun, whether it be my marriage, my daughter, work, money, drugs, whatever it may be. But there's a hole inside of us that only God can fill. And I'm never going to be happy until I find God. until I give my life to Him. There's no purpose greater than serving the Lord. And so I can't be a good husband until I give my life to the Lord. I can't be a good father, and He has to come first. And God's put this thing in my heart and my mind, and I've started working but a blueprint for rebuilding your life.
Yeah.
We get things out of order. You know, if you look all throughout the Bible, look at creation, there's order to things. God, He created things in order. There was an order to it. We get life out of order. I'm trying to build a fortune without having a job.
Yeah.
We get things out of order, and I know I did, and God has to come first.
Yeah.
And I've had that out of order. I never knew that that's what I needed.
Yeah.
I never knew that getting on my knees was the thing that was going to fix me. You know what I mean? I thought that I had to fight. I thought that I had to struggle and all those things, and there's been a lot of struggles since I've been saved, but I haven't had to struggle alone. Yeah. He's always been with you, and so that God-shaped hole inside of me is now filled. I don't.
Now you're not longing for you don't need to have alcohol to be a version of someone that they like.
I live a life today. I don't have to escape from.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't need drugs and alcohol to escape from the life that God's given me today. My wife, and my daughter, all three serve in ministry together. Like the majority of our conversation revolves around the Bible or God or ministry. My whole life revolves around God and ministry. But that's what He did that day at the end of that project.
Yeah.
Pastor said at one time that we're created to worship.
Yeah.
We were created to worship God. And if we don't worship God, we'll worship something else. And I wrote that down in my Bible. I thought, wow, that's the greatest revelation ever. But it's very true. If I don't worship God, I'll worship something else. I'll worship my job. I'll worship my children. I'll worship drugs. I'll worship something because I'm created to do that.
Yeah, created to fill that hole.
Yeah, that hole has to be filled with something. And you can throw all the money in the world, all the women in the world, and all the drugs in the world, and it'll never come close to filling, as Solomon said, vanity.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Finally, as we close, to the Stephen that is wanting to get busted, wanting someone to come into their life and shake them up, wanting to stop. What would you say if you could talk to that one person that was you those years ago? What could be the thing that you wish you would have been told?
I wish someone would have shared the gospel with me. I wish I would have died. I don't know at the time if it would have done very much good, but I wish someone would have told me there was a better way, that you don't have to live this way anymore, that God can and He will and He wants to. He sent His Son to die so that we didn't have to live that anymore. That's how much He wants to. He sent His one and only Son to die for my sins so I did not have to live that way. And all I have to do is believe and call the name of the Lord. Man, just...
I think so many of us see those people driving in a bike with a flashlight in their mouth. And the first thought is, look what they're doing, Look at the decisions they've made. And many of us living in Alabama think that everybody has heard the gospel. You're proof. You grew up right here and never was embraced or exposed to any of it at a deep level. So how much time, instead of giving someone $5 and going on, maybe give them $5 in a 3-minute presentation of the gospel. Let's sow the seeds and let's believe in people's goodness, because you're the example that everybody that's listening to this podcast, stop going by Stephen. Stop going by men who you think God can't use. Who are we to decide the value? We don't put the price tag on us, and all we are required to do is share. And it didn't take much effort to do that, man. And so thank you for sharing what's on the, you've given us a glimpse on what's on the other side of being faithful to what God has called us to do. And man, I just pray that your ministry and your life just continues to grow. And we're going to put in the comments of this video a link to what you're doing, or maybe that's a Facebook link, whatever, so people can get behind you, and we can show people what's going on. We're going to risk it here because it could die. But in a minute, tell me what because your wife has shown commitment beyond what I think is reasonable for anybody. But apparently something grabbed hold of her that she understood what two becoming one meant, and she didn't give up on you. So what in a minute, if you can, explain to us what her relationship has meant for your life.
Her and her parent, I never knew what love was, in a parental kind of, her and her parents, her parents, I hit the jackpot with in-laws, man. Like, they're two of the greatest people I've ever met. But to see her, how they love each other and how they loved her, her dad's taught me how to be a dad.
Yeah.
Her mom's taught me how to love. For her to even speak to me again, man, what a love.
Yeah.
And she got saved here at this church on the Easter Sunday, and I never had that in me. I don't know that I could to do what she did. Yeah, I could now, but I couldn't have then. But she chose to love me again. You can't put a price on that. Yeah. I say this a lot, and I know it sounds crazy, but thank God I was a drug addict, because I got to see what that true love looked like. I got to see God work in a real, real way that I can't put into words. I saw him reach down into the depths of hell and pull me out. It's change inside of me is not something I can describe. You just gotta know. Yeah. And so, yeah.
It's amazing. Man, well, it seems like your life has been surrounded and umbrella with God's grace. Amen. He didn't give up on you. Your wife didn't give up on you. And now you're not giving up on people, man. So I just want to encourage you. Keep telling your story and keep doing the real ministry, because what you and your wife doing, going to the jail, buying a house and putting people in it, and putting that on your dime, man, that's picking up your cross. That's losing your life so you can find something better. But what can you expect when somebody's filled a God-sized hole in your heart, but to share it, man. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.